Namaste. Welcome to this edition of Dawn's Dharma Talks. I'm Dawn. I'm a yogi and an online yoga teacher who empowers professional business women over 40 who are feeling overwhelmed, burnt out, and feel they can't even fit one more thing into their schedule to use yoga tools to not only enhance their quality of life, but to move towards center and calm. Welcome, welcome. If you are tuning in live, please hashtag live in the comments. If you are catching this on the replay, please hashtag replay. I'm here today to talk about yoga myths, and I'm hoping I can bust a few of them. If you've been following me for a while, I've talked about this topic before. This time round, I asked all of you for input. So thanks to everyone who responded to my question, asking for what you all have heard are the most common yoga myths. And I have to say, you all came up with many of the myths that I wanted to talk about today. So first, to start with, I wanted to preface this talk by saying that there could be some controversial information that I will present. Keep in mind, this is my opinion. It is not necessarily the common feeling in the yoga community. And the other point here is we really have a very differentiated way of looking at yoga in the West. And over the years, I'd say since the 70s, 60s, 70s, when yoga first came to the West, United States, it was considered very woo-woo, very ethereal, very hippie, very ununderstood, non-understood. It was not understood. So over time, as yoga became more popular, the messaging surrounding yoga began to change. And in terms of where yoga landed, is it became mainstream because it became a fitness tool. It became a way to get fit, a way to get a workout. And I follow a lot of East Asian, Indian yogis and yoga teachers. And one of the messages that they have taught me, or one of the topics that they have taught me, is that the separation of yoga philosophy from the yoga practice, or essentially making it solely about fitness, is actually appropriation. And it is not a true representation of what yoga is all about, and it does not honor the roots of yoga. So my intention here is to shed light on the historical roots as a way to bust these yoga myths that we're hearing. And the first one I want to start with is the myth that yoga is not Christian. This is one that is near and dear to my heart. Some of you have heard me tell the story of one time when I was at church and I was talking with a group of people about my yoga practice, my yoga teaching, my yoga studies. And someone who was standing nearby essentially walked away. I I wasn't surprised, um, given the situation and the individuals involved. However, one of you brought this as one of the myths you're hearing. So it's not just limited, to my own personal experience. It's very common. And the part of the reason there is this myth out there is there is a misconception that in all yoga classes you are bowing down to the deities of India. And yes, yoga tradition does come from Hinduism, comes from India, it comes from an Eastern tradition. Yet, if you study the sutras and the yoga philosophy, the 8 limbs of yoga under Patanjali, there is an underlying current of universality in yogic tradition and morals and values that mirrors that in the Judeo-Christian traditions. And I'm going to speak specifically to the Judeo-Christian traditions because I am Orthodox. I'm an Orthodox Christian, and I actually found that by going through teacher training, by slowing down, by studying and taking time to be silent, I grew closer to my faith. I wasn't just going through the motions. I was studying and reflecting on all of the things I had been taught since I was a young child. The concept of treating each other with kindness, ahisma. The concept of not stealing, asteya. I'm not going to go through all of them for sake of time. But aren't those the big ones? Isn't everyone's not objective, but isn't there a lot of talk out there about being kind to people and thinking about the needs of others? And yoga philosophy practiced correctly, a yoga practice that encompasses all elements of yoga, not just the movement, and a true understanding of the history and ethics of yoga can certainly support and maybe even enhance your faith. I teach in a way that's very universal. Obviously, I have my bent as from the Judeo-Christian perspective. Yet, we still, whatever you believe in, whether it's God or the universe or source or angels, other deities, it's still underlying the same. The need to be connected to something greater than yourself. And in Judeo-Christianity, that is certainly God and the saints and etc., etc. So, there are yoga practices, there are yoga traditions where you do chant mantra. You do bring in, and with the chanting, you can bring in the names of the Hindu gods. I'm not going to go into that because I'll be here forever. And I want to keep this relatively short. My invitation is look to connect to somebody that you relate to. If you walk into a yoga class and you don't feel welcome, there's a reason. Trust your instincts. You're not going to connect with everybody. You may not even connect with me, and that's okay. My goal here is really to break down the barriers and to help everyone understand that in its truest form, yoga really is for everyone. And that is a great segue into myth number 2, that you have to be flexible and you have to have a certain body type, you have to be a specific size or shape, you have to be thin. Again, these are all very fitness based messaging. The original yoga was all about sitting. It was all about meditating. It was all about connecting to source or God or creation. It was only later, and it was in most cases young boys that were being taught to move in certain ways and in certain traditions. And then it exploded. And I'm not saying there isn't a place or time to practice those more vigorous practices. That's how I started. And it served its purpose at that time. I prefer the slower practices now. And the point being is when you have a safe space, you have that opportunity to stop, to slow down, to move in ways that maybe you haven't moved before. You've heard me talk about the grand culture. My classes are the antithesis of that. And that's what many yoga practices are. There's definitely a movement in the yoga community to bring to the forefront these slower practices, these mindful practices. There's hundreds of scientific studies that are showing the benefits of slower yoga practices. Breathing, meditation. Meditation's basically sitting in silence. And going back to the issue of being a Christian or it's not being Christian, let me invite you to think about this and consider this. When you're praying, once you stop saying the words of your prayer, what do you usually do? Do you stop? Do you listen? And on the converse side, think about the way you say your prayers. Do you rush through them as if they're just emotion in your day? Or do you sit and listen and speak each word with intention? Those are the lessons yoga taught me. And it's made me a stronger person and more connected to my faith as a result. So back to the size and the fitness, and you have to be flexible. All of these tie together. I don't believe that. There are poses I can't, well, that's another one. If you do a pose long enough, if you try, you can do any pose. And that's not true. There are physical limitations in the way our bodies are built that don't allow us, just by our structure and our skeleton, that we can't do. That's why I love teaching with props. Chair is one of my favorites. I hope to get in and do more of the chair sequences. So if anyone has any requests, please drop them in the comments or in my DMs, and I'll create tutorials and classes. Again, coming back to this concept of yoga being for everyone, trying to reverse that trend of the fitness trend, that you have to look a certain way, or you have to go through this specific sequence, because this is the way we teach it. There's so many options out there for yoga instructors. You can Google yoga and you'll get a million people. The key is to learn how to move safely in your own body. And that is one of the huge benefits of a slower practice, is you have the time to think about the movement, to move in a way, listening to your teacher's cueing, and to really feel the way the pose moves in your body. And I'm moving because I move. I like to move. But I also like to move slowly because it's allowed me to improve my quality of life. And ultimately, isn't that what life is all about? So with the slower practices, you do have the invitation and the opportunity to learn to connect more closely to your body, which in turn helps you feel more confident to practice yoga and to try new things both on your mat and off your mat. And with the right instructor, you, and the right yoga teacher, they will guide you through a practice with different options. And if you're working one-on-one with somebody, your teacher should be talking to you about what your goals are, what your limitations are, and to work through a practice that fits what you need. Now, is it 100% accurate? No, but trial and error. The important thing is that you are honest with yourself and you're moving in a way that's authentic to you. So it also ties into it's easy. It's not. So it may be easy for somebody who's, 21 or in their 20s, super flexible, and is very very active. Yet a 76-year-old can practice yoga in a chair, moving within their own range of motion, safely within their own range of motion. There's so many movements we can do when you're sitting in a chair, opening, closing the arms up and down. Again, depending on someone's range of motion in their shoulders. The beautiful thing about using a chair is if there's any mobility challenges or limitations with the feet, ankles, legs, you can use the chair and work on strength and core from the chair. So a couple of the other myths that came in was it's mainly about a variety of poses. And I briefly touched on this just a few moments ago. There are styles of yoga that are very structured. There's the Hot 26, which is a series of 26 specific poses that you perform and you practice in a specific order. There's no variation, no chance to rest or take it at your own pace. There are also other practices where you only practice a pose until you master it, and then you can move on to the next pose in the sequence. There are fitness-based programs that are very structured. They have a certain format. And while the specific poses within the sequence may change, the basic structure of the practice remains the same. You have your warm-up sequence, your breath work sequence, you have your sun salutation sequence where you're warming the body up, then you hold the pose for a while, and then you begin to cool down. Again, this building up to a specific goal pose and then cooling down. Again, very hierarchical, very almost the antithesis of what the origins of yoga is all about. Another myth is you need special equipment, special clothes. Nope. I did just post a daily tip or a tutorial not that long ago where I'm in shorts. And all you need to do is be in comfortable clothes. You don't need a fancy Lululemon mat. You don't need the fancy Athleta top and leggings. You just want to be comfortable. And you can practice on the grass. You can practice on a blanket. You can lie down in your bed. The possibilities are endless as long as you have enough room to move. And even if you don't, and you're working one-on-one with somebody, we make it work within the space you're in. So I hope you enjoyed this talk about yoga myths. I hope I busted a few myths. I would love to have all of you continue this journey of sharing what yoga truly is with other people in your sphere of influence. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. If you are enjoying these Dharma talks, please like and subscribe, or accept the invites as they come in. If you are interested in working with me or learning more about what I have to offer, please drop an "I'm interested" in the comments, and I will be in touch. I do offer a 20-minute free yoga experience, where we can sit down, we can talk about your goals, and you can walk away with 1 or 2 yoga tips that you can immediately incorporate into your daily routine. Again, if you're interested in that 20-minute experience, drop an "I'm interested" in the comments, and I will connect with you. I hope, again, that you are enjoying this content. If you have any requests, drop them in the comments or DM me, and I will see you all next time. Be well, my friends.